Welcome back to another episode of the AI Journal podcast. Today, we're joined by Frank from Picterra, and we're going to be looking at everything to do with how Picterra started, what the origin story is, and how their business helps companies across the FMCG sector, right through to farming and preventing the incursion of structures that impact pipeline. So a great lesson today. And if you stay on, we're going to be looking at how they can give you a free white paper on these areas. But first of all, Frank, we'd love to welcome you to the show and get to know a bit more about you, sir.
I'm Frank de Morzier, so one of the co-founders of Picterra. And we started all this already like 5 years ago now. So me, before that adventure, I had basically a PhD in machine learning and remote sensing from the PFL, so here in Lausanne, in Switzerland.
Very cool. And what was it that excited you around that space, Frank, that got you going for it, made you excited to come join the company and really get you into this area of work?
Yeah, I mean, it was, so I've been in that space. I was working actually in a private company that was in the Earth observation sector, and we were really looking at what was going on. And there was, all this trend of new sensors, new satellites launch, etc. And next to that, there was really this maturity coming out from the machine learning, computer vision field. And we said, okay, now it is really, we just need to take the two, put them together, and give this capacity, out to the community, to the people. While next to us, what we were seeing was new companies popping up, but really, piggybacking on just doing services. And it was at that time a good thing to do, but we wanted to go ahead of that, leapfrog, and really go straight into giving the capacity out to extract the information.
And what was it, the business benefits to the organization that get it? What was that really Picterra drives and helps with? If you can paint a picture for us, please, Frank.
Yeah, so the starting point, where Picterra, let's say, enters in the game, it's really something that I think now everyone has experienced last year with the lockdowns and the COVID. It's the moment you need to answer some questions that are basically either inaccessible because distributed across the globe or far away or not in your control. So these are the things where basically managers, people have a need really for getting data, information on certain locations, certain assets, critical assets, and the way to do that is to use what we call remote sensing, so observe it from either the space or from drones. That's really the starting point. And I think with the COVID, that was really also something we saw, people starting to really get this aspect of when I cannot go there on the ground, how can I do that? And then starting from this kind of thoughts, you can start to really have a global understanding. I can now have information on that location, then I can have it on any location. And you can start to answer crazy questions.
What sort of questions have you been asked, Frank? So if I'm looking at satellite or presumably balloon or any other imagery, and I'm an oil and gas company, as an example, what are they looking for? What are the business answers that you're giving them?
Actually, it's when you start to look at this, it's pretty interesting to see these things no one actually knows. You have a ton of people walking down, these pipes. If you take the gas example, you have helicopters flying, and in the end, it's a lot of hours spent with people looking down. And what they're trying to look at, actually, it's really this dangers. And for them, a danger is it's something that would dig into the pipeline. So it's a construction site, the starting of a construction site. It's someone that digged into his garden, someone that extended, a bit his house, or could be some abandoned elements on top of the gas pipeline. And this, to do this sometimes weekly, where there is a helicopter flying the full network, that is, you can imagine the costs are crazy there. So that's where really you can then have the satellite coming in and starting to really have this fine look at the pipe over time, and something very repetitive like that is a perfect task for satellites or for drones. And there we see, depending on the country or the place, you depending on the size of the network, you will go for one or the other, and often a combination. So you will have a bit, this this large scale aspect from satellite where you start to narrow down. You see, okay, things are changing there. I get an alert there. I want to get a bit more precise. Then you go on site and you check, or then you launch a drone on that segment. So that's where it starts to be very interesting. Now you can start to optimize with the different platforms.
But is that difficult? So technically, I've mentioned satellite, you've mentioned helicopter, presumably there's drones, airplanes, balloons, and whatever else. How do all those different images or image qualities actually impact your detecting whether farmers are eroding the landscape or there's an oil pipe damaged or something else? It must be quite a complex job.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. So definitely, there's you need to have the right platform, the right sensor for what you want to look at, and that's where we, let's say, help is to find this right combination, and often it's still quite straightforward. The moment you are clear on what you want to look at, so the example of construction site I was mentioning, at some point, there's a kind of a minimal unit you want to look at. I mean, you don't want to find all the leftover that are even less than a meter square or square foot. So there's this kind of limitation when we engage with our customers. That cleared out some of the possibilities. And then we say, okay, we can go from a satellite perspective, or we need for that to really go from a drone or then balloon or other high altitude platform. So there is something we now can very quickly in the setup of what wants to be achieved, narrow it down, and now the limit. There's no gap. So the highest image you can get, the highest definition and resolution you get from a satellite is today 30 centimeters. So you can imagine a block like a square like that. You can take your hands. That gives you a little bit the size of 30 centimeter. So basically, the thing you want to look at, they need to be larger than this in order to be captured by a satellite. And then planes, balloons, down to the drones, they really take over the fine-grained resolution after that. And so you have a full coverage again of objects you can do.
So how are you doing it technically then? What analytics are you using? What AI? Because I can imagine if you've drone footage from 1 week ago, plus helicopter, plus plane, plus satellite, and you're trying to make sense of all that, what AI or what technologies are actually interpreting, analyzing, reporting, visualizing, or whatever you do to give the businesses or the industries the things and the information they need?
We also took a certain approach there to say, let's try to unify. So it was a bit of a choice to say, on one hand, we'll try to facilitate this access to the data, so to the image. And then on the analysis side, so basically the models we provide on our platform and people can adapt and start from, there we unify them. So you can come with the drone data, you can use the satellite data, no difference. The platform will understand it, and let's say our model are unified in a way they can deal with all this. This means that we have put a focus in the end really on imagery, and so I could say like that 2D images. So if you come with your laser data, etc., then it's a bit of a different scope, and we try to bring it back a bit to this uniform, let's say, imaging set. And there's a lot you can do, in the end, with 3D data when you put it just back on the map and look from above. So you can still deal with altitudes, with elevation data, with our models. But we wanted to have a common denominator there between all these platforms.
Love it. And Frank, I've got a quick question on a side question. Have you seen a TV show called The $1 Billion Code on Netflix at the moment? Because it does a lot to do, and you might have seen it if you have, and Kieran, if you haven't seen it, it's to do with how Google Earth was created, and it's how that idea was stolen. But the whole core idea was, that reminded me of what you're doing with Picterra, is where they're trying to get a full clear picture of the world, and they've got to take pictures from left, right, center. And they said the access to it, you couldn't run it on the servers, you couldn't get access to it. It was too complex, it was too thing. So they end up hacking NASA to get hold of the pictures to present it at somewhere. And I was just thinking, it's pretty crazy, right? How far this kind of what you're doing with the drones and bringing this kind of technology, how you're helping companies, the kind of leapfrog movement in the past 10, 15 years, right?
Yeah, true. I mean, it's interesting because it's, down the road, what we are looking at, it's it's that we can search the world. I mean, the world surface, or you can say in the end, it's a bit as you type on Google for any information. There, you would type to get any information about the planet surface. And that, it's true that it's really the direction we're going after.
Yeah.
And as you said, I mean, among the challenges today, on one day, there's basically 100 terabytes of images that is collected from the different satellite players. That's just the satellites. Then you put next to that the other platforms, and that's every day. So there's definitely, I mean, the machine learning part in that is huge, and there's no way that you will avoid it if you want to get to this point that you can really get this end information, this usable information at the end of the day.
Yeah. And what was it then with, say, one of the projects you've worked on, and Kieran was touching on it earlier, where did you see with a certain industry that it was just the power of using Picterra and the kind of change it could have on that business quite quickly? Have you got an example that you can share for an industry or a specific client or area like that, Frank?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's really several, but I think in the interesting one, a bit touching what I was mentioning on also on the COVID before, is we've been working with some sustainability departments, in fast consumer goods companies, and there they have to deal with so very large, in the end, distributed supply chain. So in the end, what they're handling, it's different parcels of land where they are sourcing the raw materials everywhere across the globe. And there that we could come to a point where together we could say, look, we can have a look together of for instance, are the right things grown on this parcel? So that could be, I mean, that's the most straightforward thing. But then going beyond and saying, yeah, but we can also basically have indicators of, is that farmer there having, kind of a sustainable living? Yeah. Because he has grown enough of these crops, and in the crops he has a good balance of more cash crops and then crops that he needs to produce. So, you can start to go really even in the societal aspects of things. And I think that was the key moment where this person realized, okay, it's then completely open. Things that are there on the land, I can start to question them, and we can go on that. So that was an example where we really then could, do things that touched many points of the ESG, not just the environmental aspect of it.
Love it. And what kind of question would you have then, Frank, to people getting started or need to use your kind of software, or to people, the kind of question you'd ask when they think, how do we unlock this data and how do we use this to really make sense of what we've got? What would your advice, or perhaps what would your question be to them getting started?
I mean, in the state of today, there's still this question of, are they actually already handling some of these data? So, I mean, I say that for the people that, for instance, have already they're already sourcing either drone imagery, or they have even drones. And then next to that, the people that have never touched that. So for the one that have never touched the data, I would really basically have them thinking, where is the critical point, in the information in terms of fragrancy, and then this kind of definition of the information they needs to grasp. So in the end, in terms of really down on the ground, what's the size of the things they want to look at, and this fragrancy. And once they have this clear in their mind, and they see that it's something that is not to be refreshed every minute, and that it's not millimeters, then you can start to really say, okay, there's something we can do, because we can have a look at it, for instance, on a weekly cadence, on a monthly cadence, with objects I was mentioning centimeters to meters. So there you are really in the right landscape.
Where do you see the future of the industry going then, Frank? Because we've mentioned satellite, but we mentioned drone, and now we're almost into edge computing, and where we all carry camera with us all the time. Do you see that as all the images around all the world will need to be brought together to give us a 2D, 3D, almost 4D picture of everything? Or do you think the industry will just evolve toward more affordable satellite technology and allowing governments and industries and individuals and businesses to make real great business decisions based on visual data?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely happening in the sense that there is for instance, on the satellite side, there is definitely now a huge amount of players that get out and with the constellation satellites. And maybe you heard, I mean, even just this year, there has been, I think, something like 5 or even 6 public offering on these companies, so even SPACs, these special acquisition companies. And there, it was an interesting move. So now even these companies, they are getting very quickly public. And so to deploy pretty fast in the end the constellation of satellite. So that's something that is going there. But that doesn't hinder the rest. So there will be also other platforms, like you mentioned, the balloons. There could be also these solar drones in the stratosphere. And if you look at all the programs, for instance, from Facebook or Google around balloons or drones for the telecommunication, it makes sense to also equip those with some imaging capacities. So it will be multiple, and you will have this kind of plethora of sensors for sure. And then, as you say, the next stage to that is then to reconcile that with all the pictures taken also on the ground. So in the end, you're really, as you say, a 4D image of the world. But so now there's really the satellite side of things is anyway going on, and next to it there will be all these other platforms. And the regulation of the drones they are still moving in the sense that it's not settled yet. And by the way, in the US, you have already 200,000 licensed pilots, for instance, so just in the US. So that's something that is already at a quite large state, even if it's just the beginning, actually.
Yeah. I love it because I think looking at things, it's not exactly the same, but I said smart glasses are going to be a game changer because they're taking pictures all the time. It's just picture upload to the cloud, picture. And it's the same kind of thing with what I can see with drones. When I think one of the first things I saw was when they were doing 5G towers and they were using drones to basically get them up there and display where they need to put the connectivity in. And it was taking time down from hours to literally half an hour. And I was seeing that with what Samsung or Siemens are doing. And I was like, whoa, this is a game changer. Like to have all those pictures and like you said, to cross match it with the sensors you're mentioning, Frank. It's a crazy world that we're going to be living in 5 years, right?
Yeah. No, clearly, and we see it now also with the transportation, so the railway network. So, for instance, we have Plum & Craven. They are an engineering firm that is doing actually the maintenance for instance, rail network in the UK. And what they see is actually also one key element for them is the safety of all these people walking down, on the rails. And you have this for quite other linear assets where in the end it is still there's these dangerous jobs, let's say. And with the drone, that's something you can really then streamline and get the risk completely away. That's something that it's really massive what you can reduce in terms of risk.
Yeah, love it. And Frank, I feel like we can talk to you for ages about these kind of topics and have to have you back again. But for people listening, where can they find out more around you? Is there anything they can get from you? And where can they find out more around Picterra, please?
Sure. So, I mean, with this podcast, actually, so there's a demo application so they can access. So actually, it's a very interesting one where it's quite interactive and they can really look at it in a very nice way. There's different examples, so it's a bit interactive. And there's also a white paper on how basically AI can help actually the inspection. So there's specifically the road and let's say asphalt and concrete inspection industry. So it's a very interesting one because it goes down to a super concrete maintenance inspection duty. And I think that can also make it very tangible for everyone then.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time, Frank. It's been good to know you, and we'll put all that in the show notes and to how to reach out to you, Victoria, and the wider Picterra team. And thank you for your time today, Frank. Learned a lot, and it's been a very exciting episode. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Ken. It's been a great pleasure. Great time.